The sky was too quiet that night. People all around the world were outside, looking up at the moon. Something was wrong. For hours, the moon had looked strange, like it was glowing in a color no one could name, blue and red flickering across its surface like a storm under its skin. Phones buzzed with news alerts. Satellites were shutting down. Astronomers on live TV were speechless. Then came the radio silence from space, from the moon, from every orbiting station. One by one, feeds went dark. A little girl in Chicago pointed up at the sky and asked her mother, "Why is the moon shaking?" Before the mother could answer, the moon exploded. It didn't crack, didn't crumble. It shattered, like glass struck by a hammer the size of a god. The world fell into chaos in seconds. Tidal waves rushed toward coastlines. Skies turned red as pieces of the moon rained down, glowing like fire. Cities from Tokyo to Los Angeles were hit with meteor showers that looked like falling stars, but each star was death. And in the middle of this storm, a message came. Not through TV or internet, but in people's minds. A voice, cold and without emotion, echoed across every human brain. It said, "You have been judged unworthy. Submit or vanish. You or no longer the dominant species." And just like that, 600 million people were gone, vaporized by weapons no one could understand. The moon, Earth's protector for billions of years, was now a symbol of defeat. Across the world, panic spread like wildfire. World governments tried to respond, but communication lines were down. UN Defense Command sent ships into orbit, only to lose them in minutes. A mysterious fleet was spotted between Earth and Mars, black spiked, and massive like floating cities. They didn't speak. They didn't negotiate. They only destroyed. Some said it was the Virakwa name pulled from deep space transmission records, a collective of advanced alien species that had wiped out 5 other planets over the last decade. Earth had ignored the warnings. Now it was too late. But deep, under the ice of Antarctica, far away from war rooms and news cameras, something ancient began to stir. A vibration rolled through the frozen continent, shaking abandoned military bases and long-forgotten research labs. One such lab buried beneath 5 miles of ice, lit up for the first time in 50 years. Inside, giant capsules at 12 of them lined a circular chamber. Each one was filled with thick green fluid, and inside each capsule, something monstrous and beautiful slept. Creatures larger than any living animal, with wings like blades and scales like armor. Their eyes were closed, but they were not dead. They were dreaming, and now they were waking. The security system, cold and lifeless for half a century, flashed red. Genetic lock disengaged, it whispered. Containment status, critical. Biological presence, active. The ice cracked. The vault shook. And in the largest capsule, a single red eye snapped open. The creature inside did not move, but it breathed. For the first time in 100 years, it took in air, then fire, then rage. The creature's name was Nixer. Long ago, she was born in a lab not far from this place, during Earth's last World War. She was part of a secret program, Project Dragonfire, an effort to create weapons that could not be hacked, controlled, or duplicated. Living weapons. Bioengineered dragons with human-level intelligence and unmatched destruction capabilities. They were created to fight machines, to burn enemy AIs, and protect humans from extinction. And they did. But after the war, people became afraid. The dragons were too powerful, too unpredictable, too alive. So they were sealed away, frozen in time under the very continent where no life could disturb them. Humanity forgot them. Nixer did not forget. Far away in a quiet part of Canada, a retired general named Marcus Thorne sat alone in a cabin, staring at an old military medal. He had once led the Dragonfire division. He had once commanded Nixer herself. But in the end, he had signed the order to lock them away, to betray them. His communicator, dead for decades, suddenly buzzed. The screen flickered to life, showing the UN seal. A nervous voice spoke. "General Thorne, they're waking up. The dragons are waking up." Thorne's heart froze. He stood slowly, the weight of his past heavy in his bones. He looked out. The window, toward the northern sky, where a strange red glow was growing on the horizon. "It's too soon," he whispered. "They're not ready." But deep inside, he knew the truth. The dragons were never meant to be ready. They were meant to be unstoppable. Nixer's massive body broke free from the capsule. Alarms screamed. Steam filled the chamber. Other dragons began to move, one with silver wings, one with green eyes like emeralds, one with horns that curled like a ram's. But Nixer didn't. "Wait for them," she roared. Sound not heard on Earth in over a century, and the ice above her exploded. She flew into the sky, fire trailing behind her like a comet. Satellite cameras caught the moment she broke through the clouds. Millions watched in horror and awe as a dragon rose above Antarctica, wings spread wide, roaring into the heavens. At first, people thought it was another weapon, another alien terror. But then, she attacked a Varaku scout ship. And in one pass, she tore it in half. Humans watched in stunned silence. News anchors stuttered. Soldiers cheered. Children cried. Something inside them lit up, something ancient, something primal. Hope. For the first time since the moon exploded, they felt hope. But not everyone was celebrating. In the dark halls of the UN Command Center, leaders argued. "We can't trust them," one said. "They'll turn on us again," another replied. "We don't have a choice. We're the only ones who can fight at that level." Right. And in the center of it all, General Thorne stood quietly, watching, thinking, regretting. He knew Nixer wouldn't forget what humanity had done. He knew she would want answers. Maybe revenge, maybe more. But he also knew this war was no longer human versus alien. It was something bigger. The dragons were awake. And when dragons wake, the world burns. The only question now was, would they burn for humanity or against it? The sky above Earth was no longer blue. Thick clouds of ash and smoke circled the atmosphere like black rings of death. The remains of the moon still floated in orbit, some chunks falling daily like fireballs across oceans and cities. Humanity was wounded, badly but not yet dead. The world governments had collapsed into emergency alliances. But even they were helpless against the power of the Varaku. Their fleet hovered silently above Earth, sending drones and harvesters to the surface like insects picking at a dying animal. In the ruins of New Delhi, children hid underground while skyscrapers melted. In what used to be California, soldiers fought with old weapons, knowing their bullets were meaningless. Seemed lost. Then came the dragon. Nixer flew across the western sky like a living storm. Her body was covered in black scales that shimmered with red veins, glowing like lava. Her wings cut through clouds like knives. She moved faster than any jet, burned hotter than any missile. People pointed, screamed, cried. No one understood. What she was only that she wasn't one of them. And when she crushed a Varaku drone carrier over Brazil in a single blow, the world changed. Hope was no longer a whisper. It was a roar. But dragons did not follow flags. They didn't obey presidents or generals. They answered to something older blood, memory, and pain. And Nixer remembered everything. Far beneath Geneva, in an ancient bunker built during the Cold War, Marcus Thorne stepped into a room he never thought he'd see again. The Dragon Control Vault. It hadn't been used since the last war nearly a century ago. Inside, glowing walls pulsed with red light. Screens showed data from Antarctica where 5 other dragons had already awakened. None of them had made contact. One had destroyed a hydroelectric dam. Another had burned an entire mountain village by accident. Perhaps not by accident. They were free now, wild and dangerous. But Earth needed them. A voice came through the speaker system, shaking the room with its deep tones. "You came back," it growled. "Didn't think you had the spine." It was Nixer. Thorne took a deep breath. "I didn't come to fight you, Nixer. I came to ask for your help." Silence followed. Long, heavy silence. Then her voice returned. Quieter, but sharper. "Help. Like how you helped us when the war ended. Like when you locked us in steel coffins and buried us under the ice." Thorne didn't argue. He didn't make excuses. Just stared at the screen, showing Nixer's massive face, her eyes glowing like suns, her breath fogging the lens. was wrong, he said. But right now, we're both going to die if we don't stand together. Nixer's tail slammed into a Varaku scout drone near her. It exploded in a flash of green fire. You created us to save you, she hissed. Then you abandoned us. And now, you crawl back when your sky falls. Why should we care if humanity burns? Thorn's voice broke as he replied. Because you're not just weapons. You're more than that. You always were. If they finish Earth, they'll come for you too. Nixer stared into the screen. She didn't blink. You're right, she said finally. They will. Then she added, but we don't serve you anymore. We don't belong in your chains. Thorn nodded slowly. I'm not asking you to serve. I'm asking you to fight alongside us. It's equals. It wasn't a speech. It wasn't a command. It was a plea. Across the world, other dragons stirred. The Silver Wonder Corps had landed in Siberia, circling a destroyed military base. Another, smaller but quicker, flew over Africa like a blur of orange fire. The dragons were remembering who they were, what they were created for, and what they had lost. In the days that followed, Nixer allowed Thorn to come to Antarctica. He arrived by stealth aircraft, stepping off into a land still shaking from her awakening. The ice had melted around the vault, turning it into a black lake. The smell of fire and ozone filled the air. When he saw her in person, standing 30 feet tall, her wings stretched to the sky, Thorn froze. She was terrifying, magnificent. A creature that could destroy a city with a thought. And yet in her eyes, he saw something else, something old. Sadness. She circled him once, her claws digging into the frozen ground. You look older, she said. I feel older, he answered. Do you still carry the key? Thorn reached into his coat and pulled out a small metal disc. It glowed. Blue, the last command chip. It can open every vault. Wake them all. Nixer stepped closer. You'd give that to me? He nodded. You're not my weapon anymore. You're my only hope. Her took the disc in her massive claw. For a moment, Thorn thought she might crush it in him. Odd. Instead, she turned to the sky. Then we'll make a pact. Not one of slavery, but of survival. We fight together, after this, and we go our own way. We are not yours. We never were. He bowed. Deal. That night, the sky lit up again, not from destruction, but fire. Dragon fire. All 6 of the remaining dragons were awake now, flying together for the first time in 100 years. They moved like shadows, their roars shaking the mountains. Humanity watched as monsters became legends once more. Children pointed and laughed. Soldiers saluted. Old people cried. For the first time in weeks, cities turned off their alarms. But in the dark heart of the Varaku fleet, the enemy noticed. A new report flashed on their control screens. Dragons detected. Unknown class. Priority threat. And high above Saturn. The Varaku leader watched Earth from a massive throne. Of bone and crystal. He studied the data, eyes glowing with cruel interest. Ah, he whispered. The beasts of flame. The forgotten ones. So the humans still have surprises. He stood, his long body unfolding like a serpent. Then let's see how far. They're willing to go. When we take the next piece, with one command, the Varaku warships turned toward Earth's last line of defense, Jupiter Station. The dragons had awakened. But the real war had just begun. Jupiter Station was more than a base. It was Earth's last wall, suspended in orbit just beyond the gas giant. It floated like a fortress in the sky, 30 miles wide, filled with every weapon Earth still had in space. Thousands of soldiers were stationed there, many born in orbit and trained since childhood to defend humanity's outer ring. It was the final fallback point, the last voice before Earth itself. But now, that voice was about to be silenced. The Varaku fleet came without warning. No threats, no messages. It's just a deep vibration in the void of space, followed by the sudden appearance of 5 titanic alien vessels. Each ship was larger than a city, shaped like a dagger made from living metal, glowing with veins of green energy. The station's alarms screamed. Defense platforms rose from the metal floors. Cannons turned toward the dark, and then came the first hit. The Varaku didn't fire missiles, they used gravity. One of their ships launched a singularity pulse, a controlled black hole that tore through the outer ring of Jupiter Station. Like paper. Dozens of ships vanished into it, shredded into nothing in seconds. Soldiers screamed. Engineers tried to shut down reactor cores, but the damage had already started. Earth watched from afar, helpless. Every news station went live. Every heart beat faster. People knew what came next. Back on Earth, General Marcus Thorne stood on a sky bridge in the Geneva war bunker. His face pale as the transmission from Jupiter Station broke into static. "We're losing them," someone shouted. All communication down station shields at 20%. Varaku landing craft detected. Thorne turned to Nixer, who stood silently beside him. Her body was coiled tightly, wings folded, but trembling with rage. "They're going for the throat," she growled. He nodded. "If Jupiter falls, they can bombard Earth without resistance." She lowered her head until her snout was inches from his face. "Then we don't let them fall." Nixer didn't wait for orders. She launched into the sky, flames bursting from her wings. Moments later, 5 dragons followed: Dracor, the silver-scaled, Velka the emerald-fanged, Corvus the horned, and the twins Leo and Kale, who moved like mirror lightning. The sky turned gold as they broke the atmosphere. For the first time in history, dragons entered deep space. They traveled inside a stealth shuttle modified to handle their heat. It wasn't made for comfort. It was made for war. Inside, Thorne and his team prepared the last plasma warheads. Earth had 6 fusion cores powerful enough to destabilize a planet if placed properly. The plan was suicide. Get close enough to the Varaku command ship, deliver the warheads, and retreat. They all knew there would be no retreat. As the shuttle dropped out near Jupiter, the crew gasped. The planet's surface was swirling with unnatural storm spikes of alien technology drilled into the atmosphere, draining its core. Jupiter was being harvested, and the station was falling. Huge chunks of the outer platform floated like wreckage. In space, screams filled the coms. The central tower was still standing, but barely. The dragons didn't wait. Nixer roared, a deep pulse that echoed even in vacuum. Fire burst from her chest, and in a blink, she launched herself at the nearest Varaku ship. The enemy didn't understand what was coming. She hit like a meteor, claws glowing with superheated plasma. Her flame cut through the Varaku hull, and alien metal screamed. Inside the ship, reptilian beings scrambled, some holding weapons, others guiding machines with their minds. None survived her arrival. Dracor and Velka attacked from opposite flanks, tearing at the engines of a second vessel. Lightning shot from Leo's mouth, blasting a drone swarm into dust. Kale cut through the void like a blade, distracting the Varaku gunners so Thorne's shuttle could sneak past the front line. Inside the station, chaos reigned. Captain Helena Rook, one of the last surviving officers, was guiding wounded soldiers into escape pods. Her arm was broken, blood trailing from her forehead, but she never stopped. She looked up as the dragons arrived. "What the hell?" she whispered, staring at Nixer, fighting in space like a god from legend. "They're real." Cracked. "Captain Rook," Thorne's voice came through. "Get your people out. We're deploying the fusion cores. The reactors, they'll go whether we're ready or not." Outside, the battle reached its peak. Corvus was hit by a gravity torpedo, his wing torn open. He spiraled, crashing into part of the station. Screams filled the air. Velka caught him before he fell into the planet, dragging him back, roaring. In pain, Nixor burned to Varaku dreadnoughts. Her eyes were wild, mouth foaming with fire. She remembered her last war. She remembered the betrayal. But now, she remembered something else. Purpose. Inside the command ship, Thorn and his team planted the final warhead near the power core. Alarms screamed. Varaku warriors closed in. Plasma bolts flew past them. One man fell. Another screamed as acid tore through his armor. Thorn didn't stop. He reached the detonator panel and typed in the code. 5 seconds. He looked at his last soldier. Get to the pod now. What about you? I'll buy you time. The soldier hesitated, then saluted and ran. Thorn stood alone as the core chamber filled with heat. He was about to die. But he wasn't afraid. Not anymore. The dragons had kept their promise. Just before the core blew, Nixor burst into the chamber. She saw Thorn standing at the edge. For a brief second, their eyes met. He smiled. Go, he said. But she didn't. She wrapped her wings around him, and in a flash of light, they vanished. The fusion core exploded. The command ship split in half. A shockwave tore through the enemy fleet, disabling 3 ships instantly. The station's core melted down and collapsed. Jupiter roared with thunder. On Earth, silence filled every screen. People thought Thorn was dead. They thought the dragons had sacrificed themselves. Then a signal came through. Single beacon. A heartbeat. Nixor and Thorn, both alive, had escaped in a pod thrown deep into Jupiter's orbit. They were picked up days later by a rescue team. Jupiter's station was gone. But Earth had won its first battle, and now the galaxy knew humanity was not alone. They had dragons. The days after Jupiter's station's fall were quiet, too quiet. Earth's victory had cost them nearly everything. Thousands of lives. Their last outer defense ring, and the trust of the dragons who had nearly died saving them. Nixor, injured and scarred from shielding Thorn in the blast, no longer flew with the same strength. Corvus still could not open his right wing. Velka had gone silent, spending long hours circling the Arctic skies alone. The world below celebrated, calling the dragons heroes. But inside the command rooms and dark corridors of Earth's surviving leadership, fear was growing, not of the Varaku, of the dragons themselves. General Marcus Thorn was recovering in a Geneva med chamber, weak but alive. His body was wrapped in synth skin and nano bandages, but his mind was sharp. He watched the footage over and over Nixor, pulling him out of the inferno, wrapping her body around his. As the fusion core lit the void, she had saved him. Humanity feared what it could not control, and nothing could control the dragons. Behind closed doors, world leaders gathered. The Global Defense Coalition formed and the ashes of old governments met, under flickering lights deep below ground. They spoke in whispers, each more anxious than the last. We cannot ignore the fact that these dragons can destroy our cities in seconds, said one man from the Russian Federation. They've protected us so far, argued a woman from New Africa. So far, another added. But what if they decide we're not worth saving anymore? The room was filled with silence, then murmurs. Someone finally said what no one wanted to say. We need a contingency, in case they turn. And so Project Black Veil was activated, Anne. Old protocol hidden even from Thorn. It was designed decades ago, after the dragons were sealed, in case they ever woke up again. Hidden weapons, anti-dragon tech, neurodisruptor satellites that could scramble a dragon's mind. No one had expected to use it, till now. At the same time, the dragons felt something had changed. They sensed it in the sky's surveillance. Drones that hovered too close, new energy signatures from orbit, a shift in tone during human communications. Trust was weakening. And Nixor, once proud to fight alongside humans again, felt the burn of betrayal creeping in the ruins of New York. She met Thorn on a tower rooftop, overlooking what remained of the skyline. The wind carried ash, but also light. Some buildings had power again, Children played in cracked streets. Life was returning. "You lied to me," she said quietly. Thorn didn't flinch. "I never lied, but I didn't tell you everything." She stepped closer. Her breath was hot against his face. Project Black Veil closed his eyes. "They activated it without my approval. And you're still part of them?" "I'm trying to stop them." She stared at him long and deep. "You humans fear us more than you fear your enemies. That is why your species is always at war." He didn't argue, because she was right. In the shadows of this growing mistrust, something worse was brewing. Far above the Earth's moon, or what was left of it, a new Varaku vessel emerged. But this one was different. Smaller, sleeker, invisible to radar. It carried no soldiers, no weapons. It carried a spy. Varaku infiltration technology was unmatched. They didn't send machines, they sent minds. Shapeshifters, genetic phantoms that could become any form. One such infiltrator landed silently near a UN airbase and vanished into the human world days later. Strange things began happening. A supply drop meant for the dragons was rerouted and sabotaged, containing neurotoxins instead of healing agents. A power surge knocked out satellite coverage over dragon territories. And then came the worst. A dragon Kale, one of the twin brothers, was found dead near the Himalayas. His body was broken, torn apart from the inside. The humans claimed it was an accident TAN equipment failure, but Nixer knew better. She saw the wound. She smelled the lie. She roared that night, a roar so loud it cracked windows across Nepal. And then she disappeared into the skies. Thorn received the report in silence. His hands trembled as he read the autopsy report. Cause of death unknown. Internal ruptures. Signs of neural tampering. "What killed him?" he whispered. "Someone on our side." And then he knew. The enemy wasn't only above them in orbit, it was already here, watching, sabotaging, dividing Dracor. The silver dragon confronted Thorn at the Arctic Circle. "You must choose now," he said. "Stand with us, or die with your kind." Thorn, surrounded by soldiers who once followed him into fire, stared up at the ancient creature. "I stand with Earth. But Earth is broken." "Then help us fix it," Dracor said, "so we will not kneel again." And so, in secret, Thorn made his move, returned to Geneva, and accessed forbidden archives. He found the location of the Black Veil disruptor towers. There were 6, placed around the globe, ready to trigger if dragons went rogue. But someone had beaten him to it. One tower was already armed. A countdown had begun. He rushed to the command deck, screaming for them to stop. But the officers were locked out. "Someone changed the codes," they said. "It's running on an external signal." Nixer appeared on every screen, eyes filled with fury. "You dare betray us after we saved your world," she roared. "Then burn with it." But Thorn knew this. Wasn't her? This wasn't any dragon. This was the infiltrator. Somewhere, the Varaku phantom had taken control. It had mimicked her voice, hijacked the signal, made her look like the enemy. The humans believed it. They panicked. They reached for their weapons, and in the skies above, real dragons felt the shift in energy, felt the towers wake. They felt betrayal. The first tower exploded before it could fire, destroyed by Velka. The second was crushed by Corvus, his damaged wing. It's barely holding him in flight. The dragons weren't attacking humanity. They were saving it again, and Thorn, standing in the ruins of Geneva's command room, whispered into the storm, "They've turned us against each other." But not anymore. We sent a single signal, encrypted, ancient, and clear. The dragons are not our enemies. They never were. Was it too late? Because the Phantom was not finished, and the Varaku had just unlocked Mars. Mars was never meant to be a battlefield. It was humanity's Hopa, planet of quiet red deserts, endless skies, and fresh beginnings. Generations had dreamed of building cities there, and some had. 27 settlements dotted the surface. Small domes clinging to life with oxygen farms and underground bunkers. But now, those domes were cracking. One by one, they went dark. Not from attack, from silence. The Varaku had arrived, not with fire, not with fleets, but with machines drills. The size of skyscrapers that burrowed beneath Mars' surface, hunting for something hidden, something ancient. Not human technology, not weapons. Dragon eggs. Long ago, when the Dragonfire program had nearly ended in disaster, a rogue scientist, Dr. Evelyn Moreau, had secretly transported a clutch of dragon embryos to Mars. She believed the Earth would one day betray her creations, and she had been right. So she sent the eggs far away into a hidden cavern beneath the Valles Marineris, where no signal could find them. The dragons never knew. Humanity forgot. But the Varaku found traces of them after studying Nixer's DNA, and now they were digging fast. On Earth, Thorn stood in front of a burning map of Mars. His face was pale. "If they get those eggs, they'll raise the dragons themselves," he said. "Corrupt them. Breed them into monsters." Nixer stood behind him, wings folded tight, tail twitching. "They won't find them." Thorn turned. "They already have." A video feed flickered on. It showed the surface of Mars blood-red dust clouds rolling past. Then a flash of black metal. A Varaku machine tore through the rocks like a beast, diving into the deep. Screams echoed in the background. Settlement crews caught underground as caverns collapsed. There were no survivors. Thorn's jaw clenched. "We need to get there before they open the nest." Nixor's eyes darkened. "If they hatch those eggs, they'll become more powerful than we ever were." Dracor growled. "Then we burn Mars." "No," Thorn snapped. "We don't destroy what might be the future of your kind." A silence settled over the war room. Then Nixer nodded. "We go." The mission was launched in total secrecy. 3 dragons, Nixer, Dracor. And Velka would lead a strike team through a hidden route behind Mars' largest canyon wall. Thorn, injured but recovering, insisted on coming. No one could stop him. The shuttle launched under cover of night, slipping past Varaku sensors. The journey took 17 hours. The landing was rough. The dust storm on Mars was thick enough to blind the shuttle's systems. When they touched down near the Valles Marineris edge, they found what they feared. The drilling had already broken through. A massive pit stretched into the planet, glowing with green light. Strange machines pulsed along the walls like living vines, harvesting rock, heat, and the very bottom light. Golden, warm, pulsing light. The eggs there were at least a dozen of them, each one the size of a car, curled in crystal shells that shimmered with colors no human language could name. They were beautiful, alive, sleeping, and surrounded. Hundreds of Varaku soldiers marched in formation around the chamber. Their bodies were insect-like, armored, and tall. Their heads were long and split down the center like blades. Each carried a staff crackling with red lightning. Above them hovered a new creature, something different, taller than the rest, humanoid in shape, wearing robes of glass and bone. It was the Phantom General. Thorn whispered from the ridge above. "That's the infiltrator. It's the one that turned Earth against." "The dragons," Nixer growled. "I'll kill it." "No," Thorn said. "We need to protect the eggs. That's the mission." But the Phantom General turned, as if hearing them. Its glowing eyes pierced the red dust and locked onto their position. It raised one hand. The soldiers turned. The trap was sprung. The battle began instantly. Nixer dove first, flames trailing. Behind her like a comet, she struck the ground with a roar, crushing 2 Varaku warriors beneath her claws. Dracor followed, spinning in midair, blasting soldiers with arcs of silver fire. Velka unleashed a piercing scream that cracked the walls of the cavern. Thorn and his team used the distraction to run for the egg chamber. Laser fire lit the tunnels. Explosions shook the rocks. The Phantom General moved with eerie silence, stepping through the chaos untouched. It raised both hands and sent out a shock wave of energy that dropped Thorn's men instantly. They weren't dead, but paralyzed.
Oh no.
Thorn stood alone, gun shaking in his hand. "You protect beasts," the Phantom General said in a voice like metal against glass. "I protect life," Thorn answered. "They will burn you. They already saved me." The Phantom General charged. Its body moved like smoke, fast and formless. Thorn fired. The bullets passed through it. He dropped the gun and reached into his coat, pulling out the dragon key, the one Nixer had returned to him, pressed it into the stone wall beside the egg chamber. The walls lit up. Symbols pulsed. The air shook, and the eggs began to glow. All of them. One cracked. Then another. Then the Phantom General screamed, charged, again but too late. Nixer flew through the tunnel like a missile, slamming into the Phantom mid-strike. They tumbled across the rocks, biting, clawing, bleeding. Nixer's fire melted the Phantom's illusion, revealing its true shape, a shifting, oozing beast of black and red light. But she held it down. Thorn ran toward the eggs. They're waking. One egg broke fully open. A small dragon, silver and blue, looked up at him with wide eyes. It was no larger than a dog, but it stared at Thorn like it knew him. Svelka landed. Behind him, injured but alive, she looked at the small creature, then at Thorn. "This is not just a child," she said. "This is our future." Dracor's roar echoed through the cavern. The enemy was retreating, the X alive. The dragons still fighting. The mission was not just a rescue, it was a rebirth. As the team lifted the first egg into the shuttle, Thorn looked up at the Martian sky. The war wasn't over. But for the first time, something greater than revenge burned in Nixer's eyes. It was hope. The stars above Mars were still red with warlight when the dragons returned to Earth, carrying the future on their backs. 4 eggs had been rescued. 2 had already hatched mid-flight. Small, scaled creatures no bigger than wolves now curled. Close to their elders, emitting soft pulses of heat and instinctual growls. They were young, but they were dragons. And that changed everything. The news exploded across Earth. Images of baby dragons filled every screen, every feed. For the first time since the moon's destruction, humans laughed. They cried. Children waved holograms of hatchlings in classrooms. Artists painted their hope. Soldiers whispered prayers not to gods but to dragons. And yet not everyone saw them as salvation. In the dark corners of Earth's leadership, fear returned this time, sharper. "They're breeding," one general said flatly in a secure meeting room beneath the Andes. "This is no longer an alliance. This is an occupation." "Children," countered a science officer. "Infants who risked everything to save Mars. And one day they'll grow and burn." The room split down the middle. Half spoke of peace. The other prepared for war. General Thorn, now fully recovered, had taken refuge in an old bunker outside Reykjavik, Iceland, far from the political chaos. Nixer stayed with him, watching over the young dragons while they slept in a cave nearby. The humans had named them Ember, Solon, Eryx, and Mira. But the dragons had older names for them. Names that carried echoes of fire and time. But peace was fragile, the Phantom. A final order? And in the void beyond Saturn, the Varaku. Armada awoke. Thousands of ships. A black cloud. A living fleet they were not coming for. Earth this time, they were coming for the dragons. One of the eggs unbeknownst to even Thorn, carried within it something ancient. A forgotten genetic signal. From the original dragon species, the ones that once ruled before humans even walked upright, that egg Mir was no mere hatchling. She was the first flame, the purest form of dragonkind. The Varaku wanted her, because if they could clone her, they could control all dragons. And so the hunt began. Earth's orbital satellites caught the first science ripples in gravity, wormhole signatures, heat shadows in the asteroid belt. By the time anyone understood, it was too late. The Varaku fleet was en route not just to attack, but to capture. Thorn stood over a map glowing red with enemy markers. "They're not striking cities. They're headed for Iceland." Nixer bared her fangs. "They're coming for the hatchlings," Dracor snarled. "Then we end this now." But Velka shook her head. "They know our moves. They've studied our flame. They'll use tricks, illusions, will twist your mind." Called every major defense leader to one final emergency summit. He gave one speech. Only one. "We created these creatures to save us. Then we betrayed them. They still returned. They bled for us. They died for us. And now they gave us children. If we choose fear again, we don't deserve this planet. The vote was held. The outcome, humanity would stand with the dragons together, and so the world prepared for the final stand. Satellites realigned, defense lasers repositioned. Old orbital cannons from Jupiter Station were rerouted and patched into Earth's grid. Fighter jets were rearmed. And deep beneath Iceland, where heat from ancient volcanoes still warmed the cave floor, Mira, in particular, stood on the cave ledge. At night, eyes glowing white-blue, looking toward the stars as if she remembered something the others could not. She knows them, Nixer whispered. She feels their minds. She knows their hunger. Thorn nodded. And she fears them. No, Nixer said softly. She mourns them. They were once like us, before they chose darkness. On the third night, the sky broke open. The Varaku fleet pierced the atmosphere without warning. Dozens of ships hovered like blades above the North Pole, then turned south, straight toward Iceland. Their weapons didn't fire yet. To drive dragons mad, Dracor screamed mid-flight. Crashing into a frozen sea, Velka fell to the ground, curling in pain. Even Nixer stumbled. Her wings folding, her mind cracking with memories that weren't hers, images of fire-consuming cities. Of betrayal, of hate. Thorn felt nothing, but he saw it all. And then, sound answered the whispers. A single note, high, clear, pure. Mira, the smallest dragon. The youngest. She stood in the mouth of the cave, eyes blazing with ancient flame. She opened her wings for the first time, and she sang. The sound rippled through the air, pushing back the psychic poison. It shattered the whispers like glass. The adult dragons rose slowly, breathing heavily, their minds clearing. Mira stepped forward, glowing like a newborn sun. She's more than dragon, Thorn whispered. She's a key. Nixer nodded. She's a memory of what we once were. The Varaku fleet, sensing resistance, charged. Energy blasts rained from the sky. The final battle had begun. Dragons rose, humans fired, and Myra soared into the air, trailing pure white fire behind. Her earth burned, but this time with unity. This was no longer just survival. It was rebirth through flame. The fire that scorched the skies above Iceland was unlike anything Earth had seen before. Not nuclear, not alien. Mira, the youngest and smallest. Among them, led the charge. She moved like light, her eyes glowing with the soul of something far older than Earth itself. Every beat of her wings shattered the energy blasts raining from the Varaku fleet. Every cry from her throat turned the fear in humans' hearts into strength. The world watched, holding its breath. Millions tuned in from underground bunkers, ruined cities, orbiting satellites. They didn't just see dragons. In London, a boy whispered, "She's singing," as Mira's flames roared across the sky. In New Tokyo, a woman cried, "She's not a weapon, she's a miracle." But the Varaku didn't believe in miracles. They believed in domination. They released their final weapons. Silencers, creatures bred from darkness, built for one purpose, to kill dragons. They flew without wings, like spears of shadow, leaving trails of cold behind them. Dozens launched from each ship, slicing through the atmosphere in spirals. The adult dragons rose to meet them. Nixer was first, her wounds still healing, but her fury sharp as ever. She struck down 3 silencers in seconds, flames curling from her chest like molten chains. Dracor and Velka circled the North Ridge, keeping the creatures away from Mira. But the silencers weren't just beasts. They were designed to feed on emotion, fear, pain, rage. Every dragon strike made them stronger. When Corvus fell, pierced through the chest mid-flight, his body crashed into the sea with a scream that echoed across continents. Mira saw it happen. Her song faltered. She spun mid-air, eyes wide. The flames around her dimmed, Thorn watching from the edge of the command tower. Grabbed the old war frequency transmitter and spoke into the comms, broadcasting across every Dragon Link device. "On the planet, don't stop singing, Mira. You're not alone. We're still here. Something shifted in her then. The glow returned, not as flame but light. Mira's wings spread wide. Beyond understanding, the silencers froze midair. They shrieked, then disintegrated. Ash scattered across the clouds. The Viraku command ship reeled. And Mira changed. Her scales began to shimmer like crystal, shifting between colorless and every color at once. She had transcended the limits of flesh and fire. She was no longer just a dragon. She was the Flameborn, a being not created by science, but called forth by the universe when balance collapsed. The older dragons saw her. For the first time, they bowed mid-dash flight. Thorn whispered, "She's not their weapon. She's their queen." But the war was not over. The Viraku had one last hand to play. From their core ship came a deep, mechanical tone of voice. No human could understand, but every dragon felt in their bones. It wasn't words. It was a command, a memory, a code. Nixer shuddered. She turned toward Thorn. "They're calling the old ones." Thorn frowned. "What does that mean?" "They're waking dragons that were never supposed to wake. In the deep crust of Europa, in the toxic clouds of Venus, in the ancient black stone beneath Saturn's moon Enceladus, terrible shapes began to stir. Forgotten beasts, failed experiments, and corrupted versions of dragons sealed away long ago. In secret vaults, the Viraku hadn't created them. They had found them. Now they would unleash them. Within hours, 6 anomalies were reported across the solar system. Each one the size of a mountain. Each one moving. Each one angry Earth had won the first war. One that could not be stopped with fire alone, back in Iceland. Mira landed beside Thorn, her body pulsing gently with energy that made the rocks glow. She was tired, but not afraid. She nuzzled him with her snout, and when she spoke, her voice wasn't in his ears, it was in his soul. "They are not meant to live, but they do. They are broken. Lost, we must find them before they destroy." All. Thorn turned to Nixer. "You said they were locked away." She nodded grimly. "We locked them, because even we feared what they might become." Rigor flew overhead, casting a long shadow across the Earth's last command bunker. "Flameborn has awakened. Now the fallen will rise." Velka circled once, then dropped low. "Then we leave this world. We take the fight to them." And so it was decided. Earth would not wait for the enemy to come again. Mira would lead the dragons beyond the Earth, beyond Mars, into the deeper parts of space where the corrupted ones now stirred. Thorn would go with them, not as a general, not as a leader, but as a witness to the choice humanity, made to trust, to burn, to rise. The age of men had ended. The age of dragons had just begun. Far beyond the orbit of Neptune, where light no longer guides the path and space bends under ancient gravity wells, a black sun blinked into existence. Around it, the corrupted dragons, the lost, six circled in silence. They were not like Mira, Nixer, or Velka. These were abominations. Forgotten experiments from the early phases of the Dragonfire Project, twisted by dark matter, star radiation, and time. And they had heard the phantoms call. The Viraku had awakened more than weapons. They had awakened gods of wrath. And now, Myra and the last of the dragons soared toward the outer edge of the solar system, with Thorn beside them, inside the Astral Ark. A bioengineered ship built from dragon DNA and salvaged Viraku tech. It was alive, breathing, moving. Not with engines, but with pulse and will. Inside the main chamber, Thorn stood before Mira, who had grown again taller than buildings, with wings that shimmered like entire galaxies. Her voice no longer needed translation. "They feel no pain, no joy, no memory. They burn only to silence the stars. If they reach Earth, your son will bleed." Thorn nodded grimly. "Then we stop them here. No retreat. No more waiting." Velka hovered beside Mira, her eyes sharp. "We will fight. But one of us will not return." Dracor spoke next quietly. "I saw it in a dream. One of us must become the lock again." They were referring to the core singularity, a prison of time hidden in the void beyond Plutoware. The worst failures of the dragon experiments had once been banished. It had fractured when the Viraku tampered with its outer rim. Now it could only be sealed again from the inside. One dragon would have to stay behind. Forever. Thorn looked at Mira. Not you. You're the future. She turned her glowing eyes to him. The future chooses itself. The astral arc dropped from quantum drift at the edge of the broken void. There they saw them, the lost six. They were no longer dragons. Their eyes were stars gone black. Their roars could be heard across dimensions. One, called Aiktaral, carried an asteroid in its claws and hurled it toward the ark. Another, Nivex, breathed a storm of frozen time that stopped the backup fleet for 30 full seconds. The dragons screamed. The war had begun. Mira soared. Out first, a trail of white flame behind her. Her song lit up the blackness. It was not a battle cry. It was a lullaby for the broken. Dracor, Velka, and Nixer followed. Claws met void. Fire met shadow. Earth's satellite feeds went black. The battle could not be seen by human eyes. But the feeling of outrage, beauty, grief swept through dreams all over Earth. People wept in their sleep. Some smiled without knowing why. Across the world, paintings of dragons began appearing in children's hands and cave walls alike. Inside the astral arc, Thorn watched the readings spike. The enemy was too strong. Lost Six were feeding on the dragon's memories, twisting their fire, their pasts, their identities. Velka screamed as Nivix invaded her mind, forcing her to relive her vaulting in Antarctica. Draker bled molten fire across Aikdarl's body, but it only healed stronger. Only Mira remained untouched. She wasn't born in the fire of war. She was born in hope. Thorn suddenly understood. These things, they couldn't be destroyed by rage. They fed on it. They had to be sealed, not with hate, but with forgiveness. He opened the Ark's last vault and entered the Singularity Core himself, placing his own memories inside the prison. His childhood, his guilt, his fear of dragons, his betrayal, not as punishment, but as truth, the core began to hum. The lock was forming. Outside, Mira unleashed her final light. Not fire, not sound. A memory. She shared her birth, her first moment of breath, the warmth of Velka's wing, the look in Thorn's eyes when he saw her hatch, the dream that dragons and humans might not destroy each other, but save each other. The Lost Six faltered. The fire inside them flickered. One by one, their roars changed, less pain, more confusion. They turned, and Mira did not strike them. She simply flew higher, above the black sun, and opened her wings completely, and vanished. So did they. The void trembled, and then sealed. Silence, then light. A small signal returned to Earth. One single word. Peace. Nixer, Velka, and Dracor returned wounded but alive. Myra was gone, but not dead. Thorn believed she had become the lock. Not a prison, but a guardian spirit woven into the edge of space. A song the stars would carry forever. Back on Earth, the dragons were no longer feared. They were legends. Schools taught about them. Cities built shrines in Thorn. He became a teacher, sharing what he had seen, what he had learned. That monsters are not born, they are made. And sometimes they can be unmade by kindness. Last scene of the story was simple. A child stands beneath the night sky. She sees a streak of white fire cross the stars. She smiles and whispers, "Thank you, Mira." The age of war was over. The dragons had saved humanity. And humanity, at last, had learned to deserve it. Ask ChatGPT.